A week that was supposed to be boring in the SEC turns out to be a massacre for several teams who still had playoff hopes. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. On today's show, we'll get you our winners and losers of SEC Week 13. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, based on how this weekend went, we normally start with our winners of the weekend. We are heading straight for our losers of the weekend. That's right. We got to start with our losers. And first off, I mean, look, there were some big losers this weekend, but how about Jalen Milroe at Alabama? And one of the most shocking games of the weekend. Alabama, with everything left to play coming into this past weekend. SEC title game, playoff chances, all that. They were absolutely dominated by the 5-5 Oklahoma Sooners on Saturday night, 24-3. Mighty Alabama held to just 3 points of offense, and their quarterback, Jalen Milroe, like we said, our first loser of the weekend, just 11 of 26 passing for 164 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, including a pick six. Milroe was held to 15 rush attempts for just 7 net yards. And for Kalen DeBoer being so offensive-minded, Brent Venables' defense shut them down. Only 234 yards of offense for Alabama. It's its fewest of the season by 79 yards. Greg McElroy saying on his podcast over the weekend, the thing that scares you most about Alabama is that if Jalen Milroe is on, they're so tough to play against. But when he is not on, and there have been multiple games this year where he hasn't been, it's a problem. Many still expect Milroe to head to the NFL after this season just because of his gifted talent. But, man, in terms of expectations for what he could do, I mean, he was fantastic against LSU and other games this year. And then other games he has had absolute duds. And this was the duddiest of all the duds. Another loser of the weekend. How about Kalen DeBoer? We preached all summer that life after Nick Saban would be tough. But 4-3 in the SEC with one more game left to play. This is pretty rough for Kalen DeBoer. And Oklahoma's 24-3 lead over the Tide late in that game was Alabama's largest deficit in a regular season game since 2016 and became Alabama's largest deficit against an unranked opponent since 2003. I saw a stat in games where Alabama was considered a 14-point or more favorite under Nick Saban. He lost just 3 times in 139 games. Under Kalen DeBoer, they have 2 losses already in just 8 games. And both those losses came against 5 lost teams this year, Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. Paul Feinbaum saying over the weekend, that loss was simply inexcusable. And you could blame anyone you want, but you would be smart to look at the very top because that team did not look prepared. They did not look focused. They did not look like they had any clue what they were getting into. And I don't know how that could be the case because everyone who watched knew Venables had a really good defense. In the middle of the night, Feinbaum said he's getting texts from old Alabama fans going, what have we gotten ourselves into with Kalen DeBoer? He said it's a worse Alabama team than we saw against Vanderbilt. This team was completely clueless. Now, they did lose linebacker Deontay Lawson, left the game with a lower body injury. We'll monitor that to see if he'll be back for the Iron Bowl this week. But pessimistic Alabama fans already calling Kalen DeBoer a newer version of Mike Shula. Already Alabama fans tweeting out, is Nick Sheridan going to be back next year as the OC? Can we make a change there? Year 2 going to be a big one for DeBoer and his staff. But first, they got to beat a very confident Auburn team in the Iron Bowl. Good news is it's at home where Alabama is undefeated this season. Our next loser of the weekend, how about Lane Kiffin? I'm not sure if Kiffin is ever going to get over that hump and win big at Ole Miss. This was his best chance, his most loaded team yet in Oxford. And the Rebels come up short in the Swamp Saturday afternoon, falling 24-17. That knocks Ole Miss out of playoff contention. The Rebels were a 10-point road favorite. They ranked 9th in the college football playoff rankings last week. All they had to do was beat Florida and Mississippi State, and they were playoff bound. Obviously, a lot was at stake, and we didn't come through, Kiffin said after the game. A lot of missed opportunities. Yeah, the Rebels failed to score in 3 trips inside the red zone. They dropped countless passes all day. Kiffin called the miscues very unusual. Jackson Dart threw 2 costly interceptions late. Their D lineman, J.J. Pegues, who they use in short yardage situations, he was stopped twice on 4th down runs. He had wide receivers with drops. Caden Davis, a kicker, missed a 34-yarder. Bottom line for Ole Miss, losing Quinshon Judkins, to me, was a bigger deal than anyone wanted to admit. And Henry Parrish has done fine filling in this year at running back, but he's missed some games with injury, including this one, and that has forced Ole Miss to look one-dimensional at times. The Rebels next will host Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl this Friday. And then one other loser of the weekend from this game, we got to jump to Florida defensive end, or former Florida defensive end, now Ole Miss defensive end, Princely Umanmielen, a former D-end who transferred this offseason. Towards the end of the game, he was getting it from fans yelling at him, and it led to him leaving the field early and attempting to charge up the ramp outside the stadium to go approach fans who were yelling stuff at him. He had to be held back by security. He was then escorted to the team's bus. On Sunday, he released a statement saying, "I let my emotions get the best of me due to people yelling recklessly at me, but putting my hands on anyone wasn't even a thought. Nevertheless, I had fun in my last game in the Swamp, brought back some amazing memories. Wish we could have left with the dub. Regardless, God is always good. Loved every bit of my 4 years at Florida. Wouldn't trade it for anything. God bless all of you." Yeah, it's just, for those who missed it, I mean, it was making the rounds of social media, and some people were going like, what is this? Why is there a video of Princely Umanmielen running after people, trying to run up the ramp outside the stadium? Pretty crazy, but yeah, look, Florida fans, they get the last laugh. This is where you live in this day and age of the transfer portal. It's one thing to transfer, from an SEC school and go play for an ACC school and you never play them, or like Caleb Downs goes to Ohio State. Bama's not playing them, so no big deal, right? But to go inter-conference and go from a school like Florida, where you played many years, to Ole Miss, who's on the schedule, you knew this was coming. And again, it's just one of those things where the team you left beats you. It's going to hurt. It's going to sting even that much more because you supposedly left for greener pastures. And granted, Ole Miss has had a better year than Florida overall, but on Saturday, Florida had the leg up. Another loser of the weekend. How about Texas A&M's defense? The Aggies were all but knocked out of the playoff hunt on Saturday, losing in a 4th overtime Saturday night at Jordan-Hare Stadium, falling 43-41 against Auburn. A&M could still make the playoff, but they would have to beat Texas this weekend at College Station and then beat Georgia in the SEC title game. Pretty long odds at this point. Not impossible. But the loser this week to me, the Aggie defense. They've been so solid so much to the season, but they gave up almost 500. I know it was 4 overtimes, but 300 passing yards to Peyton Thorne, 3 rushing touchdowns to Jarquez Hunter. Cam Coleman had 100 yards. Keandre Lambert-Smith had 100 yards. Missed tackles everywhere for A&M. They did have 2 sacks and a pick, but that same defense that held Florida, Arkansas, Mizzou all at 20 points or less, they've now given up 44 and 43 points, respectively, in each of their last 2 SEC games. Question is how many they're going to give up this week against Texas. Good news is the game is at home, where they are undefeated in the conference this season. Another loser of the weekend. I hate to do this because I've been a big fan of this guy, but I'm putting Diego Pavia in here. It was a game where just about everybody was picking Vanderbilt to pull off the upset of LSU. LSU prevails 24-17, and Pavia, put him in the loser category. He goes 13 of 24 passing for 186 yards and a touchdown, also rushed for 43 yards and a score, but just not enough on offense to get it done. They hit a 63-yard touchdown pass on their first offensive snap of the game, but the rest of the night managed just 245 more yards of offense. Good news for Vandy is they've got 6 wins, so they're bowl bound. It's just a little disappointing after they were 5-2 a couple weeks ago. They've now lost 3 of their last 4. And the primary reason for the loss is the offense has bogged down. The defense has been suspect at times. They will finish the season hosting Tennessee this Saturday, hoping to play spoiler on the Vols playoff chances. See what they look like in that one. Another loser of the weekend, I've got Brock Vandagriff in here. The Kentucky starting quarterback has struggled so much this year. He struggled on Saturday, went 3 for 7, 51 yards with a touchdown and an interception, was sacked a couple times. And a crazy stat, Kentucky had more turnovers than offensive touchdowns in their 8 SEC games this season. They turned it over 15 times. They scored 10 offensive touchdowns in those 8 conference games. Mark Stoops, he opted to bench Vandagriff in this one. They went to the freshman quarterback Cutter Boley, who had some success against that really good Texas secondary. He threw for 160 yards in the second half. Stoops said they were hoping Boley could provide them a spark, and kind of did, but not enough to pull off the win. But the Cats, they dropped to 4-7 on the season. They'll finish the season off hosting Louisville this Saturday, but even a win there isn't likely to get them a bowl invite. A rough season for Mark Stoops and company. Another loser of the weekend, I got Mississippi State's defense in here. It's been a really rough season for Jeff Lebby's crew. The offense has had its moments. The true freshman quarterback Michael Van Buren has looked good at times, but it's been that defense has been the Achilles heel. Mizzou racked up 475 yards of offense. Probably could have easily put up 500. And the Bulldogs lost to Mizzou 39-20. State drops to 2-9 on the season, 0-7 in the SEC. And Jeff Lebby has got a ton to rework on that defense to get them SEC ready for next year. Up next, they'll finish the season on Friday at Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl, a chance for them to play spoiler in that rivalry game. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we gave you our losers of the weekend. We'll switch to some positivity. We'll give you our winners of the weekend. That's coming your way here in just a second. But first, I want to remind you, today's episode presented to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book right now. New customers, you can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gets you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL and college all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today to join. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And, of course, they've got all the college games and lines up there, all the final regular season week in the SEC up there at FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out each and every day. All right, we gave you our winners of the weekend, or losers. We did backwards this week. We did losers of the weekend first. Now let's switch to our winners of the weekend. And we start with the Georgia Bulldogs. They have clinched a spot in the SEC championship game after Texas A&M's loss to Auburn. The number 10 Bulldogs sat at 6-2 in SEC play, and they win enough tiebreakers to officially land a spot heading to Atlanta with losses by Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. The Bulldogs will play the winner of the Lone Star Showdown between Texas and Texas A&M. Bulldogs have lost multiple regular season games for the first time since 2020, but the rest of the conference has struggled as well with the additions of Texas and Oklahoma. Texas is the only team remaining with only a single loss in conference play. 13 of 16 SEC teams remaining have at least 3 total losses. Georgia, they've reached the SEC title game in each of the past 3 seasons, winning the league in 2022. Bulldogs lost to Nick Saban's Alabama in 21 and 23. In 21, though, they made the college football playoff field anyway as the 4 seed and won its first national championship in more than 40 years. As far as winners go this weekend, like you said, Georgia for punching their ticket, but they did play a game. They beat UMass on Saturday, 59-21. Freshman running back Nate Frazier was outstanding, 21 carries for 136 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. We put Nate Frazier among our winners of the weekend. Another winner of the weekend. What a couple of weeks it has been for Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. Back-to-back top 25 wins last week against LSU, this week against Ole Miss, and the Gators did the impossible. They became bowl eligible after taking on one of the toughest schedules in the country. Billy Napier saying after the game, I just have so much respect for how much this team has been through and how they've handled it. They work so hard. We have some unique leaders in this group. And that game was football in its purest form. Offense, defense, special teams, takeaways, and explosive plays. Bryce Thornton, defensive back, had both of the team's interceptions, picked off Jackson Dart on each of Ole Miss's last 2 drives. Defensive tackle Cam Jackson said after the game, you look at the way we played, we had a chip on our shoulder for sure. And you got to look at the way quarterback DJ Lagway has played these last couple of games. Since he's gotten healthy, you have to wonder, if they would have won that Georgia game had he not gotten hurt and left. Remember, they were playing very well. Certainly, they would have given Texas more of a fight, that game that Texas beat them up on a couple weeks ago. But the future looks bright with the true freshman quarterback, DJ Lagway, with Billy Napier expected to return. They're going to finish the season off at Florida State this Saturday night. And the Noles are a dumpster fire, but a chance for Napier to get to 7 wins. And I don't know if anybody had Georgia going 7-5 preseason. Our buddy Phil Steele did. He had them winning more than the Vegas total expectation, but congrats to them. Another winner of the weekend. How about I put Oklahoma quarterback Jackson Arnold with their freshman running back Xavier Robinson. The Oklahoma running back and quarterback duo combined to rush for 238 yards on Alabama with 2 rushing scores. For Jackson Arnold, 25 rush attempts for 131 on the ground, and both guys averaged over 5 yards per rush attempt. 49 rush attempts on the night for the Sooners, and Jackson Arnold only threw the ball 11 times for 68 yards. Alabama knew what Oklahoma was doing running the football, and they still couldn't stop it. The win is a historic one for the Sooners. It's their first home win over an SEC foe since they joined the conference. It also represents Oklahoma's first home win over a top 10 team in the Brent Venables era. And Oklahoma fans, they made a little bit of history too. They stormed the field before the game ended. They had to be pulled off the field and then rush the field again after the game was final. But rushing the field, not something that's happened at Norman very often. It has not happened at Memorial Stadium since the Sooners win over Nebraska back in 2000. And a big win for Brent Venables. Oklahoma gets their 6th win, so now they are bowl eligible, something that didn't seem possible a couple weeks ago, the way this team was playing. But they'll finish off the season with a road trip at LSU. If you get to 7-5, that's, way better than I think a lot of people were expecting earlier in the year for Oklahoma, the way this thing was going. Another winner of the weekend. How about Hugh Freeze? What a win for Hugh Freeze. If nothing, just to stop the bleeding and get back in the win column, as Auburn hung on for a 4-overtime win over Texas A&M Saturday night. After the game, quarterback Peyton Thorne saying, my emotions are kind of tough to put into words right now, still kind of riding that high. It was hands down Freeze's biggest win so far as head coach at Auburn. They had to work for this one after jumping out to a 21-0 lead. Remember, they blew double-digit leads this season already against Oklahoma and Mizzou, but they were lucky to pull this one out. Hugh Freeze saying after the game, we are young. We're getting better every week. And, we made it harder maybe than it could have been, but you got to give them credit too. Our guys didn't fold. Quarterback played outstanding. Next up for Auburn on the road for the Iron Bowl, a chance, if they could pull off the upset, they can get a 6th win and get to a bowl game. Now, look, a week ago, if you would ask me, does Auburn have any chance in the Iron Bowl, I would have said, hell no. But the way Alabama's been playing, the way Auburn's been playing, Cam Coleman, some of those receivers can get loose. Who knows? Maybe they can give Alabama a game. It isn't Tuscaloosa, though. If this one we're at Jordan-Hare, I think a lot of people will be picking the upset here. But we shall see. But nonetheless, big win for Auburn and kind of settles down some of the Boo Birds, right? And, maybe a thought that Auburn might start losing some recruits and stuff like that. At least they settle down. Another winner of the weekend. How about the Texas run game? I was at this game over the weekend. Texas beat Kentucky 31-14. It was the Texas run game that got the job done. 46 carries for 251 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Quinn Ewers was not particularly sharp in the passing game, but they wore down Kentucky late in this one as both Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue averaged over 6 yards a carry. Also, shout out to that Texas defense. They racked up 6 sacks, 2 interceptions in the game. And one quick concern for Texas, Quinn Ewers, their quarterback, set to have a precautionary MRI on his ankle. Anwar Richardson from Orange Bloods reporting everyone close to the situation is cautiously optimistic. Ewers does not have any structural damage and will only need ankle treatments this week. It's being called a mild ankle sprain, and reports are he should be able to go. But, come on. Wouldn't that be a fun storyline that if Arch Manning had to go in the revival of the huge rivalry game between Texas and Texas A&M? But it does sound like Quinn Ewers is going to be a go. So, but something to keep an eye on throughout this week. Another winner of the weekend over at LSU, senior running back Josh Williams, who finished off LSU's win over Vanderbilt with 90 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 61 yards receiving as well. Brian Kelly saying after the game, nobody did a better job of making a statement with Josh's physicality and his relentlessness not to be taken down. You got to have a message, and he sent the message out today. He will not be denied. Gave the game ball to Josh Williams. Kelly went on to say there was a lot of noise out there about LSU football and the indictments that were made very early in this program's development, and the players didn't listen to that, and we're proud of them. The LSU defense also played very well against Vandy. They had 129 yards rushing, 332 yards passing, but more importantly, they did not turn the ball over for the first time in 3 games. And they will finish off the season hosting Oklahoma this Saturday. Real quick, just some other quick winners of the weekend. Sam Pittman, shout out to him and Arkansas as they beat Louisiana Tech 35-14 as they improved to 6-5 on the season. So they are indeed going bowling. Remember, Pittman's coming off a disappointing season last year where the Hogs went 4-8 overall, 1-7 in the conference. This year, they're 6-5, 3-4 in the SEC. So a chance at a 7th win this weekend playing at Mizzou. Arkansas has won twice away from home this season. So not crazy to think they can't get a win. Another winner of the weekend, Marcus Carroll. Speaking of Mizzou, the Mizzou running back Marcus Carroll had 3 rushing touchdowns with 61 rush yards in Mizzou's win over Mississippi State in Starkville. Mizzou remains ranked in the top 25 despite road losses at A&M, Alabama, and South Carolina. They will look to finish strong and get to 9 wins hosting Arkansas this weekend. Another winner of the weekend, Lenore Sellers, South Carolina quarterback, as the Gamecocks beat up on Wofford 56-12. Sellers threw for 307 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 53 rushing yards, and a rushing score. Gamecocks are now 8-3 on the season, 5-3 in the SEC. They'll finish off the year with their rivalry game against number 17 Clemson this Saturday at noon Eastern. South Carolina has won 5 games in a row. Can they make it 6? And some people wondering if they do win this game and get to 9-3, they're going to be red hot. Any outside chance at a playoff spot? We'll see. They will need some help, but not completely crazy. And lastly, winners of the weekend, Nico Iamaleava. He had Tennessee. They rolled UTEP 56-0. Nico threw 4 touchdown passes, 2 of them to Brew McCoy. They will finish off this season on the road at Vanderbilt this weekend. A chance to get to 10-2. And, of course, a potential at-large playoff bid on the line if they can take care of business. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. A quick reminder, today's episode presented to you by our friends over at the Game Time app, and we've been telling you guys about the new feature they have there called the Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks, it's going to filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And their Game Time Picks curation process is going to make it easier for you to save more on sporting events and tickets. They're all in pricing feature. I like that one. You could toggle that feature, show the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And of course, seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Now, I've just been looking at some of the ticketing prices happening this weekend. And for the Texas versus Texas A&M game in College Station, look, it's going to cost you pretty to get in, but this is across all ticketing websites. But Game Time, they're at least showing you the all-in pricing. So if you toggle that feature, it's showing you, look, I can find Upper Deck right now, $860, $857, $984. Again, it's a lot of money, but that's what these tickets are going for everywhere. But again, don't get suckered into some of the other websites. Won't mention their name, but you know what we're talking. And then you hit checkout and you got 13 other charges and all this. Game Time, the all-in pricing feature is your total that you're going to pay. Again, go check them out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, final segment here on Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. As we continue on here, a few quick hitters wanted to get into, and kind of a continuation of our losers of the weekend. How about the officiating crew for Alabama, Oklahoma? The officiating crew threw a flag for illegal touching. Ruling star wide receiver Ryan Williams was covered up on the play. Replays of Alabama's formation showed Williams was not covered up. Kalen DeBoer went ballistic on the officiating crew. If not for that flag, there's no question that touchdown would have stood. It would have been a 24-10 game with 14 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Now, I'm not saying Alabama would have come back, but certainly would have put up more of a fight, right? Like, it's a 2-score game. If they can get a stop, get the ball back, go score again. Who knows? But even ESPN's crew was going nuts. Their rules analyst, Bill Lamonier, indicated it was not a reviewable play. Kirk Herbstreit said it just doesn't make any sense. For a receiver not covered, it would be called the line of scrimmage, not 5 seconds after the play has already played out down the sideline. Chris Fowler reminded us this was the same officiating crew from the Georgia-Texas game, the ones who reversed the pass interference call after Texas fans threw trash on the field. Herbstreit said, by the way, DeBoer's one of those coaches that when he acts like that, he's not wrong. He's not a guy that's just going to go down there and work the officials and go nuts. He's a quiet guy, clearly, unless we miss something, and I can't imagine what it is. He's right. He's been wronged. So pretty crazy stuff there to see him lose his mind. But, yeah, I'm still – look, whether you're an Alabama or not, it was an awful call. So to see that happen is nutso. But we digress. All right, a few other SEC notes here. Week 13, obviously we had some more rushing the field, and we had more fines doled out to top 10 SEC teams going down as Alabama lost to Oklahoma and Ole Miss fell to Florida. Oklahoma and Auburn fans stormed the field after their teams pulled off huge upsets. Both schools received a fine for the field storming. Auburn will pay $100,000. Sooners will pay $200,000. It's both teams' first offense, which is $100,000. Now, the Sooners rushed the field twice, so they incurred double the fine, $100,000 and $100,000. The SEC announced via statement that they were going to fine Oklahoma twice for fans entering the field of play, not once, but twice. So, anyway, kind of a funny deal there. All right, a few other notes here. The coaches poll is out, and a look at the SEC teams. Texas comes in at number 3 at 10-1. Georgia comes in at number 6 at 9-2. Tennessee comes in at number 8 at 9-2. Then you got to go down a bit. Alabama's ranked 13th at 8-3. South Carolina ranked 14th at 8-3. Texas A&M comes in at number 19. Mizzou comes in at number 24, and LSU in the group of others receiving votes. So a chance for LSU if they can beat Oklahoma and get some help around college football. Maybe they can jump back into the top 25 before the season ends. College Game Day, they have announced that they will be live in College Station this weekend. Longhorns renewing the rivalry with Texas A&M and Texas. So intense rivalry game at Kyle Field. College Game Day crew will be on hand for that one. And the SEC Nation crew announced they will be heading to the Iron Bowl between Auburn and Alabama. So a lot of fun there. Got to be behind the scenes with the SEC Nation crew on Saturday. If you guys missed any of the pictures I posted, check me out on Twitter at Chris Gordy. You can see some of the pics and stuff. Matthew McConaughey, Vince Young were guests on SEC Nation. Really cool to see those guys, and the folks at SEC Nation do an awesome job behind the scenes. So just giving them a hat tip. Ryan McGee and Roman Harper, appreciate them taking some time to chat with us on Friday. We had those interviews up on our Friday show if you missed that. So great stuff there. Encourage you guys to check it out. One quick nugget here before we call it a show. How about South Carolina ladies, or the women rather, their college basketball team? They were undefeated, and they'll be no longer undefeated this season. They were knocked off by UCLA on Sunday, 77-62, and their loss ends a 43-game win streak. That was the program's first defeat since losing in the Final Four to Iowa and Caitlin Clark back in 2023. It was their first road loss for the Gamecocks in their last 34 road contests. So, yeah, pretty crazy. So 43-game win streak comes to an end for Dawn Staley's crew. But point that out not to say, hey, why'd you lose? More to say that's pretty damn impressive what they were able to do prior to finally losing a game. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Come on back tomorrow on the show. We will be talking a lot about Texas versus Texas A&M. They gave me this shirt. That's why I'm wearing an SEC. But nonetheless, shout out to biggest matchup of the week, Texas versus Texas A&M. We're going to be talking a lot about it throughout this week here on Locked On SEC. Thank you for making us your first listen. For your second listen, check out Jonathan Davis, who does Locked On Longhorns. You can check out Locked On Aggies. We got you covered on all those different angles. I'm Chris Cordy. It's been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.